be a great stress relief just to improvise with the blues. And, if you learn enough tricks, you can get to a place where you don't really have to think about it so much. I'm still learning myself, but I wanted to share with you a few easy licks that are based on the same shape that you can work your way into your own solos and really start to learn to connect different chords and really just unlock your soloing ability, your improvising ability with some simple blues tricks. So the first thing you got to know is where the roots are in the scales that you're playing. Now you can learn all the scales, and there's like tons of them you can learn. The pentatonic scale, and you'll learn that, like the E minor pentatonic is the same as the G major pentatonic, and it can all be really confusing. But if you learn where the root notes are to the chord you're playing and you just kind of dance around that, then that's going to give you a pretty good sound. Even if you totally mess up, you can at least dance around that root. And it's something that's not peculiar to blues. It goes all the way back to classical music. A lot of folk music, Irish fiddle music will dance around that root note a lot. So if you learn where those are, then you can build from there. And so I'm going to start with, you can learn all 5 boxes of your pentatonic scale. There are really good videos out there for that, but I just want to stick with one simple shape. And it starts with this thing called the B.B. box. So B.B. King played a lot of his blues in kind of this one shape, and he would dance around in that. So really, you start with your root, and that's going to be on the B string. So what you do is on the B string, just find, like, the name of your chord is going to be the root that you want to find. So right now I'm playing through the positive grid Spark amp, and I've got the Smart Jam on my iPad app here, and it tells me the names of the chords. Now I like that one groove I was playing there, but the one on here wasn't in the right key that I wanted to play in. So I can change that on here. I can transpose it up to where that starting chord is an E. And so if you want to jam an E, if you've got a buddy who can play a rhythm track, or if you have a looper, or if you can find on YouTube a blues jam track in E, lots of ways to get that. And then you find that root on the B string. So if you know the notes on your guitar, your B string is your second string, and an E on that's the root you want to look for, is right here on the 5th fret. And the BB box is right here. You've got that root there on the 5th string, and then above that on the 5th fret, above that on the 3rd string on the 6th fret is a note, and you can kind of slide into it. And so slide into that root note, and then your next note is on the 7th fret, and then you got one on the 8th fret, and then you got the 5th and 7th on the 1st string. So, and it doesn't sound like much if you just play it like a scale, because there's really no musicality in that. I had a classical guitar teacher in college who we were playing this thing called Carcassi, and he was like, "You're playing it like a scale, play it like a song." And I didn't really understand the difference, but it's something like this. If you just play those notes, then it's really incredibly boring. But if you add some musicality to it, then it can unlock a little more. And in the musical world, we call that phrasing, where you take a short number of notes and you add some musicality to it, some emphasis, some accent, and it really makes a big difference. Just like when you're speaking, you put accent on certain syllables. And if you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, then it's really hard to understand, right? You see what I did there? You put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, it totally messes with your mind. Well, same thing when you're playing the blues. It's all in the accent. It's all in the phrasing. And so you can look at tabs and learn some scales, but you're really not going to be making music until you get some of that phrasing down. So if you get your scale here, and you can look up tabs for the BB box and find that, but really it's in how you slide into it and what you emphasize. So that's just sliding into those first two notes there. So slide from the 4th fret on the 3rd string up to the 6th, and then you got your 5th fret here, and remember that's your root on the B string. And you can bend on that 7th fret, and that gets you the same note as the 8th fret. And see right there, I'm just messing around with the phrasing. You get a little vibrato, and your vibrato is like you're kind of turning a doorknob. You're pushing it up and down a little bit. So if think like you're turning a doorknob, and it's a little harder to do on your first finger when you're first starting out. And you can learn that from tabs, but really where you put the emphasis makes a huge difference in that. So there's your BB box. You can add another note to it. You can add the what they call the blue note, which is the flat 5 of the minor pentatonic scale, which is right here, and that's on the 6th fret, and so that little hammer or pull off right there from the 6th fret to the 5th fret really makes a big difference. And you can mess around with this little pattern in a lot of ways. So that's a really fun one to work with there. And with this same kind of shape, you can move it down, and now you're in the minor pentatonic scale. So you're no longer in the BB box, but your root is still right here, and it's still kind of the same shape. Except you want to end on here instead of here. You can add that blue note again right there. So that's a fun lick. So you're still sliding into it, same shape, and that slide from the 5th fret to the 6th fret with that blue note in there really gives you that bluesy feel. And that's still kind of the same shape that you got down here. Instead of going to the next fret on the 2nd string, you go to it here, and you can kind of dance around on that. And you can move those two shapes around. So you got your BB box right here. You got your minor pentatonic box with the blue note right here. You can move that anywhere. You just need to know where the root is. So in this progression, you've got E, A, and B, and you can dance around with those. You can play the same riffs even, just move to a different place. Now the transitions between chords, that's something that's difficult, and you can look up ways to get from one to another. But you can play the same riffs, just find that root. So the next chord is A. Well, we come down here, you're on the B string. You know the 12th fret is B, so just move 2 frets back to the 10th fret on the B string, and that's your A. So you got the BB box, you can do the same thing. And So that's your BB box. You move it down 2 frets, and now you're in that minor pentatonic. And that's adding some more into it, but you got that blue note again. And that's the same thing. It repeats right here. So this you can do right there. I'm you can see this. It's dancing around that root note right here. This is your minor pentatonic, and you got those 2 frets from the 8th to the 10th on the 1st and 2nd strings. That same thing you can move back to here on the middle 2 strings on the 5th fret and the 7th fret. See, that's the same thing. And that gives you somewhere to go, and you can move between them. So you can really learn how to connect some of those different things. And there, I'm just sliding. So that's just a really basic riff that you can add into your solos. Now you want to pay attention to your tone. If you're just starting out with the blues, you're going to want to think that you need a lot more gain than you really do. I'm just using on the Spark amp an AC30 kind of model here, and I'll throw up a screenshot of my settings for that, but you really don't need that much gain. Now you want to be able to do some dynamic, and by that, a really good tool for that is a compressor. So if you've got one of these modeling amps, put the compressor in front of everything. That's going to give you a little more range, especially when you're playing softly. You can hear it better, but it gives you a little bit of an edge, just a little bit of gain that you need for the blues. So I like to on my Strat here, and this is a cheap $125 Strat copy. It's an indie custom. You can get them used for dirt cheap, but it works. I've got my tone knobs both on about 5. I got my volume knob on a 7 or an 8, and I like to use these 2 pickups up here. So that's your 4th position on your toggle switch here. So you go all the way up and back 1. That's going to use these 2, and that cuts the signal a little bit. So that's a nice bluesy sound, a little fat tone. It adds these pickups have a little more tone on the low end, and what you really start to notice if you're playing a lot, you can get like a different channel sound just by switching this up. So you got it between the 2. Well, if I'm playing here, there's that sound, but if I just switch this, it gives you a little more crunch, a little more drive. So even in the middle of a solo, you don't need a foot switch. You can just switch this over, and then if you've been playing on a 7 or an 8 and you really want to crank it up, you can put this all the way to a 10, and now it's a little grittier, a little more dirt, a little more crunch to it there. So you see the difference here, and I've been bending, so strings are a little out of tune on this cheap guitar, but you see here's with it all the way up. If I just switch it, it's almost a clean sound. If I take it back to a 7 or 8, strum lightly, it's clean. But now if I go up here, so that's one way to just easily get a 2 or 3 channel sound without changing anything on your amp. So tone makes a big difference when you're playing the blues here. But that BB box, remember that same shape. You can look it up. I'll put a link in the description to some really good tutorials on what that looks like. And But it's just a really fun riff to just work your way up it. Add that blue note in there. That's a fun riff, and you can do that. Just find the root. There it is in A. I can do it in G. I can do it in B. Just find that root note. Here it is. You can move that all over the place. So as long as you know what chord's being played, then you can play that riff and dance around that root note. And then you can switch between the BB box and the minor pentatonic. And just try some different accents that really you got to attack the beginning part of that phrase, and then you got somewhere to go by the end. So those are just a few riffs that I like to use when I'm improvising, and I'm still learning. I'm no master by any means, but if you're just starting out, those can really help you know what you're doing and feel like you're comfortable, because you don't have to learn the entire fretboard. You just learn those two shapes that are very, very similar. Add in the blue note, and you can add it in the BB box. Right, it's right here. If you're playing in the E, if you're playing E blues, it's right here on the 6th fret, and so you can add it from the minor pentatonic, or you can add it to the BB box. So try it out. Let me know how it's going. If you have any questions, post a comment, and I'll tell you what I know. I'm obviously still learning myself, but it's a really fun way to jam. And if you got this Spark amp, then all you got to do is go to those blues there, and you're ready to jam.